All right, I'm delighted to be joined on the football show by the St Mirren manager and Waterford native, Jim Goodwin. How are you keeping, Jim?
Very well, thank you, Nathan. Very well.
Always a worry when you're doing interviews like this the day after a match. Firstly, you're wondering, will it be cancelled if the result doesn't go the right way the night before? But thankfully for you and St Mirren, the result did go very right last night. Really good victory against Aberdeen.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, win, lose or draw, I would have honoured my obligation to be here chatting to you, but it does certainly make the atmosphere of the call a little bit better, I think. We played well last night. Aberdeen are obviously one of the big fish in our league, if you like. They've got a big budget and a very good squad of players. And in the previous fixture prior to last night, they beat us quite comfortably at Pittodrie. So it was great for us to make amends last night and get a clean sheet, and we scored a fantastic goal. Obviously, a young Irish boy, Conor Ronan, who doesn't score bad goals by the looks of it, because of the 4 goals he has for us in the league at the moment, I think 3 of them have been quite incredible, really. So
right.
Long may that continue.
If the result hadn't gone the other way, how are you with dealing with defeats? Do you bring it home with you? Does it linger for a couple of days?
Not really. I mean, look, obviously, you try not to dwell on it too much. There is, there has to be a process in terms of the analysis side of the game, and trying to make sure that we're learning from the mistakes that we're making. But I think since I've got older, certainly when I was a younger player, it took me a lot longer to get over bad performances and defeats. I think as manager, obviously, there's a bit more responsibility on you, but I've started to learn how to cope with the bad results, shall we say, a little bit better in recent years.
That win last night keeps you right in touch with the top 6. It was a hugely important one because Aberdeen are just 6th at the moment. In terms of ambition, I think it's probably nearly 40 years since St Mirren finished above 7th in the Scottish Premiership. Is that the sole aim, get in that top 6?
It is. It's been our kind of ambition, if you like, for the last 2 or 3 seasons. Last season was our highest finish in a hell of a long time. We finished 7th, the highest finish since the Premier League was formed. And we'd like to try and go one step further this time round, but it's not going to be easy, and nobody expects it to be that way. I mean, in terms of club size and in terms of budget, we're probably down near the bottom 2 or bottom 3 clubs in the Premier League. But in terms of ambition, I think we've got as much ambition as any of the big boys. There's 5 places, I think, in the Premier League that are pretty much sewn up before a ball is kicked this season. And, they would normally go to Celtic and Rangers, the top 2. The 2 Edinburgh clubs would normally battle it out, along with Aberdeen then for 3rd, 4th and 5th. And, no coincidence that they are the 5 biggest clubs in the league with the 5 biggest budgets and normally with the best squads. But I do believe that 6th place is up for grabs. And, I think ourselves, Dundee United, Motherwell, albeit they've kind of stole a bit of a march on us recently, we've got a bit of a job in our hands to try and claw them back in. But I do genuinely believe that 6th place is there to be contested, and hopefully we can put ourselves in the mix for it.
I think Irish football fans will be very familiar with your name over the last, quarter of a century at this stage, almost since the Brian Kerr days and Irish underage teams, and would have tracked your career. But as a manager right now, there's not many Irish managers plying their trade outside of Ireland. I think John Sheridan's gone back in at Oldham. He's the only Irish manager in any of the top 4 divisions in England. You're there at St Mirren at the moment, so there'll be a bit more focus on you, I think, at the moment. For anyone who hasn't seen a lot of St Mirren, what's the Jim Goodwin footballing philosophy?
Listen, I think, I want to be recognised as a young coach with modern ideas. I think the game has moved on dramatically in the last 10, 15 years, especially with the influx of foreign coaches into the English Premier League. And, I think we're all trying to grab onto the coattails of some of these guys and learn from them. And I think that's all we can do, really. But look, we want to try and play an open and expansive game. We want to be entertaining to the fans. I think the days of trying to pull the wool over supporters' eyes and playing a not very attractive game is long gone now. I think everybody, from boardroom level right down through into supporters, I think everybody's a little bit more educated nowadays in how they believe the game should be played. Obviously, social media has a big part to play in that. Everybody's got an opinion. And I always believe that, football at the end of the day is an entertainment industry, and you want your supporters to come and enjoy the product on the park. To do that,
is that a freedom or a burden? Sorry, Jim. Is that, the obvious comparison saying England will be a Brighton or a Crystal Palace who've changed from have had good runs in the Premier League under a certain type of manager, but there was a sense that the supporters are maybe getting a little bit bored with it, that they wanted something more, and it feels like they've got that with Graham Potter and with Patrick Vieira. That sense that you have of actually people don't want, okay, we're sitting Mirren, we know we're the underdogs, we know there's 5 teams with far greater resources than us, but still, if the supporters don't want a backs to the wall job, they prefer actually week in, week out to know they're coming and they're going to be entertained.
Yeah, I mean, look, historically, St Mirren have been a kind of club over the last 20, 25 years. If you look back at the history of the club, they've been kind of a bit of a yo-yo team. They've been up and down in the Premier League for a few years and then relegated back into the Championship. And sometimes when you're talking to supporters, some of their most enjoyable times have been when they were challenging for the league below and winning the Championship to get promoted into the Premier League, because week after week they're coming and watching their team winning games and they're scoring plenty of goals, which would be expected of St Mirren in the league below, because then they would be deemed as one of the bigger clubs in that league. But it becomes a completely different mindset then when you come up into the Premier League, because you've got to have a different game plan. Tactically, you've got to be a little bit more astute. You can't realistically afford to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Celtic and Rangers, because they will pick you off and they will, turn you over quite comfortably. So you've got to try and come up with game plans to try and sometimes nullify the opposition. But there are 5 or 6 fixtures that I think we can really have a go in and really, try and take the game to the opposition. And we have done that recently in games, and we've got some good results off the back of it. The league game prior to the Aberdeen result last night against Dundee United last Tuesday, historically always been a difficult fixture away to Dundee United, but we went there, put on a really good performance and won the game 2-1. And the fans appreciate that when you take the game to the opposition, and if you get the end result, then that's obviously more pleasing than anything else.
And a scoreless draw against Celtic a few weeks ago as well. Like a performance like that from your team, going back to your former club where you spent some formative years, must be immensely satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, look, that particular time prior to Christmas, we were severely affected by COVID, and we were actually wondering if we were going to be even able to play the fixture, because we had so many senior players missing. But we were able to put a team on the park that were able to get a fantastic result. Nobody before a ball was kicked would have given us a hope in hell because of the amount of first-team players that we were missing. But to take a point out of that game was very, very satisfying. And we've been on a decent run since. We've won our last 3 games, 2 in the league, and obviously the Scottish Cup there at the weekend, beating Ayr United. So we're into the last 16 of the cup now as well. So, winning games of football, as anybody will tell you, it gives the players and the group lots of confidence. And we just want to continue with that momentum now that we're on, and hopefully that will carry us up the league.
There's a big Irish interest at the club. I think 5 Ireland players played last night, if you include Charles Dunn, who I think once upon a time was in and around 21 squads. You have Joe Shaughnessy, who's the club captain, Alan Power, who are a couple of lads, late 20s, early 30s, have had really long, fulfilling careers, I'm sure, over in the UK. And then the 2 that everyone are talking about, Conor Rowland, who got the goal. And guess we got to get on to Jamie McGrath at some stage. Firstly, what's the latest with Jamie McGrath? He played last night. He was back in. Are you still hopeful that he'll be there for the rest of the season?
I mean, look, you can never speculate too much. I mean, there's still plenty of time left in the January window for somebody to come in with an offer that meets our valuation for Jamie. There are negotiations going on between 1 or 2 clubs at the moment, but we had a good conversation with Jamie on Monday. He missed the game at Dundee United and he missed the cup game at Ayr United as well because mentally we didn't feel he was in the right frame of mind, and he was honest enough to admit that himself. But
I often hear that. What does that mean? Is it that there's something maybe in the back of your mind that you might get injured, that something could happen in a game that ends your possible move?
Yeah, I think Jamie was getting some bad advice, if I'm being honest, and I think he was being given some misinformation as well, because I think Jamie and his representatives and possibly his father as well believed there was a deal going to go through last week and it was imminent, but that wasn't the case at all. And I tried
just the deal to Aberdeen.
No, it wasn't. It was a team in England,
Okay.
but I explained to Jamie that that wasn't the case at all. That nobody had been in with what we would view as a decent offer for him, and so no deal was being close to being done. So with that said, we decided that we'd leave Jamie out of the Dundee United game. We've done the same with the Ayr United game. I had a great conversation with him over the weekend and asked him just to focus purely on the football side of things, get back to doing what he's good at on the park and let everything else take care of itself. At the end of the day, that's why you hire agents, let them deal with all the noise off the pitch. And, Jamie just get on with what he does well. And thankfully, he played last night. He was one of our best players. He was outstanding, in fact. And, he showed the supporters that he's still committed to St Mirren, and that needs to be the case. And if anything happens in the next week or so, then so be it. But for the time being, Jamie needs to focus on his job with us.
It's been some rise from over the past year from a player who sometime will be talking about to becoming a firmly established part of not just Stephen Kenny's squad, but of his first 11 as well. He went to Scotland with a good reputation, part of a really strong Dundalk side, had proven his ability to play in European games as well. So you knew you were getting a good player. How's he improved his game over the last couple of years?
I think physically, he's got stronger. He's definitely got fitter. His work rate now off the ball has improved dramatically from the player that I saw at Dundalk. I think he was seen as a little bit more of a luxury player when he was at Dundalk and playing as a number 10 almost, given a free role in the team. But the conversations I had with Jamie, having watched a lot of the footage with Dundalk and seen him live a couple of times, I felt there was more than a number 10 there. And I think it's really dangerous for young players to be pigeonholed as that number 10, because you almost get deemed to be a lazy player. And I felt that Jamie could be more of an 8 or possibly off one of the sides where we played him last night. We played him off the left, where he needs to track the fullback from time to time as well. And he's bought into everything that we've asked him to do. I would like to think that we have helped him improve his game. But obviously, ultimately it comes down to the player at the end of the day. And Jamie is just, for anybody who knows him back home and for the guys that who have had dealings with him in Dundalk will know that he's an absolute gentleman of a boy. And credit to his family for the way that he's been brought up. He's very level-headed. And guys like that, you want to see getting the big moves and go and earning plenty of money, because they deserve it for all that they put in on a daily basis on the training ground. So Jamie will get his move, and I'm delighted that he was able to get the recognition, for the international stage, playing for our club, because that certainly helps me when I'm trying to negotiate with other players. And that conversation was had with Conor Ronan prior to taking Conor on loan from Wolves, because Conor done very well over in Grasshoppers last year on loan, helped them get promoted, had the option to go back there. But we sold it to Conor that if he comes to St Mirren and replicates what Jamie McGrath done, then there's no reason why Stephen Kenny won't be looking to try and include him in some of the upcoming squads. And in fact, the last squad, Conor was actually on the standby list.
Right.
And with performances like last night, again, the goals, Conor will no doubt be catching the eye again of those guys making the selections.
There's different things you have to manage then at a club like St Mirren, and Jamie McGrath is a big benefit in a couple of ways. But I'm interested in the dynamic of the last couple of weeks, because you say you can go to a Conor Ronan and players of that level of a certain age at clubs and say, actually, you can come to St Mirren, it can enhance your career, you can get international recognition. But that balance as well of not stopping players from moving on, that while you want players to come to St Mirren, you also, I guess, as a manager, need to understand that a lot of the time they will need to move on and make sure they get the right move, that you need to handle a situation like Jamie McGrath at the moment properly for you and the club, so that you show players, actually, we're not going to hold you back.
Of course, absolutely. And that is, I think, a big selling point for us as a club, because we have got a history of developing players here well before I've been at the club as a manager. John McGinn, who's playing week in, week out for Aston Villa. Kenny McLean is down at Norwich City. You know, they all came through the St Mirren Academy. So there is a pathway there from the academy into the first team. As well as that, there is the opportunity for guys like Jamie, who established themselves in the League of Ireland, you know, to come and try and raise their profile a little bit more, playing in the Scottish Premier League against some really tough opposition, lots of live games on the telly. And Jamie has took to it like a duck to water, like I knew he would. You know, he scored 17 goals from midfield last year. He hasn't quite hit the heights of last season, I think. I don't think he would disagree with me when I say that he hasn't been as consistent this time round as what he was last season. But I do think some of the off the field things have maybe played on his mind from time to time. Right. But yeah, I mean, look, we would never stand in the way of any young player moving on to bigger and better things and going and getting that big contract that they're all desperate to get. And you know, but there needs to come a point where the buying club gives us a fair valuation of the player. You know, we can't just allow players to walk out and we get nothing in return. As I said, we have helped Jamie on this journey that he's on. We have helped him get the recognition with Ireland, and for that, I think we deserve some kind of financial reward as well.
There's a lot of players at the moment moving between the League of Ireland and Scottish football, and there's always been such a strong Celtic connection. We see Liam Scales making an impact already at Celtic. Johnny Kenny's on his way. John Mann's going to St Johnstone. Ross Tierney's at Motherwell. Is the League of Ireland, is it a fresh, fertile ground for Scottish clubs at the moment, where it seems to have a fully functioning football industry? Because I know some people in Ireland look at St Mirren or St Johnstone and think, how are our best players leaving the top clubs to go to mid-ranking Scottish clubs? But then you look at what Scottish football has. It is a direct pathway to English football, but also has a fully functioning TV deal, big crowds at matches that maybe we underestimate at times the size of clubs like St Mirren.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the League of Ireland has came on leaps and bounds in the last 10 years, you know, and I've got the League of Ireland pass on the internet. I watch as many games as I can, and I think the standard of the game over there has improved dramatically, and that's credit to the managers and the coaches over there, but also the caliber of player that have been developed within the not just the English academies that are coming back to Ireland, but also the local academies. You know, there's been a big investment from the FAI within a lot of the regional football, and I think we're starting to see the benefit of that now. But yeah, I mean, look, I don't think people in Ireland would mind me saying that the Scottish Premier League is a step up from the League of Ireland. You know, that's not being disrespectful to the League of Ireland. That's just a fact. You know, you're coming here to play in stadiums like Celtic Park with 60,000 people. Games are live on Sky more often, and it does raise the player's profile. There's no getting away from that. So I think that's always going to be the draw. But my problem now is because of the success of Jamie McGrath and Conor McCarthy coming over from Ireland relatively cheap. We got Jamie on the free. We paid something like £20,000 for Conor McCarthy to Cork City. The players who you have mentioned there, Scales was one I inquired about at Shamrock Rovers before Celtic were even on the scene. McInnes was another one at Shamrock Rovers I inquired about. We got blew out of the water by Hearts. Tierney, Bose. These are all players that I was well aware of a year and 18 months ago that I tried to get, but unfortunately, because of the limited budget we have here at St Mirren, we can't compete in the likes of Celtic and Hearts and those clubs come along. And I think because of the success of Jamie McGrath and Conor McCarthy, I think clubs here now are becoming wise to it. And unfortunately, that means it's good for the Irish clubs, mind you, because the price of their players...
They're finally getting a few quid.
Yeah, well, they're getting more money, but it's not great for me because unfortunately, I can't compete with them.
Looking at your own career, I've always followed you quite closely. I'm also November 81, so that sort of group that just turned 40. And when you're playing schoolboy football back in the day, you're always looking around at who the best in your age group were. And it was always, I remember you and John O'Shea were the two that everyone around the country would talk about. And you got that move to Celtic at a very young age. Like, it's a huge step as a kid from Tramore to go to the big city of Glasgow, to move away from your family at that age. Looking back now, and we won't see as much of it anymore, but looking back to going over as a teenager, how did you find it?
Listen, it was something like, 90% of young boys growing up who have a love and a passion for football. You know, you're sitting there watching Match of the Day every Saturday with the family, and you just dream one day that you'll get that opportunity. And I was no different, and it was all I'd done growing up. I had a ball under my arm everywhere I went, practiced on my own out the front garden all the time, banging the wall in the front living room, and the mother and father going off their head because of the noise of my ball banging off the wall. But yeah, I've been very lucky. You know, the club that I grew up playing in, Tramore AFC, you know, have had great success as well of boys moving on to the English Premier League and representing Ireland as well. And I'm very, very lucky with, I think, where I was brought up, the coaches I had at my local team, and obviously that bit of push and that bit of drive from the family around me as well to go and try and achieve my dreams, if you like. And it was, of course, very daunting. And you know, we spoke off air earlier about the homesickness and what have you. It can be very challenging, and there was a couple of rocky moments, shall we say, in the first 12 to 18 months where you know, you're missing out on some big events back home, birthdays, Christmases, all these types of things. The sacrifices you have to make, you know, to be a professional footballer, sometimes from an early age you don't appreciate. But I don't regret a single thing. I've been very, very lucky. I was never the best player in my team, to be honest with you. There was lots of young lads who I grew up with, who I'm still in touch with now, who were far better players than I was. But I think sometimes, you know, luck plays a big part. Somebody just, you know, catching the eye of somebody at the right moment in time, and obviously being given the opportunity then to go on trial and doing well. And yeah, it's been a great career. I've loved every minute of it. You know, I know it sounds a little bit kind of Hollywood, if you like, to say that you don't see it as a job at all, but I don't. I genuinely don't. You know, I have worked in the real world as well. When I left St. Mirren as having been involved in full-time football for 20 years, and I know what it's like to go and have to earn a proper living, if you like. And what I'm doing now is just something I've always loved, and I don't consider it work, and I'm very, very lucky to be doing it.
That time you had at Celtic as a kid, essentially, and you got to play for Celtic in the Scottish Premiership. You got that one appearance that Kenny Dalglish gave you, but you know, John Barnes comes in as manager. Kenny Dalglish is around the place. He's the one who gives you your Celtic debut. Like, what was it like to be around Dalglish?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've spoke quite openly about, you know, Liverpool being my team growing up. Obviously, Celtic is everybody's second team, but you know, all my friends supported Man U or Liverpool or Arsenal. My older brother was a huge Liverpool fan. He's 5 years older than me, so when I'm growing up, they're all the videos that we're watching. They're all the jerseys that I'm getting handed down over the years, and then I just became a massive Liverpool fan. So if you can imagine being that big a Liverpool fan, growing up watching videos of Kenny Dalglish, and then obviously, you know, watching the likes of John Barnes on Match of the Day, to then have them, you know, at Celtic, training alongside them, and then for Kenny Dalglish to give me my debut was just, you know, quite incredible. Obviously, you know, Dalglish was a huge hero and an iconic figure at Liverpool, but he was also, you know, he's considered one of Celtic's greatest players of all time. So yeah, it was quite surreal, really. And
does he take you aside the day before and give you a little pep talk, let you know? How does it all happen?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think when you see him on the telly, I think he comes across as a bit of a dour figure and a little bit dry, but he's not that at all. You know, he joined in training regularly in the small-sided games, and he still had the touches. You know, his legs weren't what they probably were, but he still had the touches. He was nutmegging people and great passing and awareness and all that kind of stuff. But he was a really good character, a really bubbly character. And yeah, I mean, as soon as he spoke, you could hear a pin drop. Everybody tuned in. I was fortunate enough as well that Tommy Burns at the time, God rest him, was assisting Kenny Dalglish at that particular moment, and he was advising Kenny on some of the younger players that maybe should be given an opportunity. Rangers had won the league quite comfortably, and you know, there wasn't a great deal to play for, and that's why the likes of myself and one or two other lads got that opportunity.
Yeah, it was a memorable day, I think, because it was the day Henrik Larsson came back from a broken leg. And I've seen you talk before about Larsson as a person, and even an interest he took in your career after you left Celtic. He's obviously, held in such regard, up there nearly with Jinky Johnson at Celtic in terms of his legendary status. But it seems behind the superstar as well, there's a pretty good guy.
A fantastic guy, yeah. And, he was obviously another iconic figure. You talk about the number 7 jersey, spoke about Kenny Dalglish has worn it, Jimmy Johnston has worn it, and obviously Henrik has worn it as well. And, you've got to be a top player to wear that jersey at Parkhead. And yeah, Henrik was just, he was just obviously a fantastic player, scored some unbelievable goals for the club, but he was such a down-to-earth person as well. And I was fortunate enough to have trained with him, fortunate enough to have worked with him closely in the gym. Both him and I were injured at one time. He was coming back from his serious leg break, and we kind of got to know each other. Obviously, he was a lot older than I was, but he was very, very forthcoming with advice and with some words of wisdom. And just a top professional. But when I left Celtic when I was 20, obviously Mark O'Neill was in charge, and I knew with the recruitment policy there at the club at that particular moment in time, with the caliber of player that they were bringing in, the centre halves in particular, in my position, there was no way in the world I was going to get a run in the team. So, I took the difficult decision that I knocked back the 12-month contract that Martin O'Neill had offered me and chose to go to England and try and further my career. But I had been down at Stockport for about maybe just over a year, and I came back up with my wife, and we ended up out having a few drinks in Glasgow one night. Ended up in a bar that Henrik was in with his partner and some friends, and he was over in the corner of the bar. And then my brother-in-law Paul, who is a huge Celtic fan, a ridiculous Celtic fan, was encouraging me the whole night to go over and say hello and introduce him, and can we get a picture with him? And obviously I was telling him, look, leave the guy alone, he's out for a night and he doesn't want to be hassled by people like me and you, and he probably doesn't even remember who I am anyway. And very kind of shortly after that, he saw me at the bar. He came over, he sat with me and my family for a couple of hours at least, and was able to tell me where I was, the games I was playing in, the goals I scored.
Wow.
And it was incredible, that he was still keeping a close eye on, someone like me who really, probably shouldn't have mattered that much to him, but he was still interested to know how we were all getting on. And not just myself, he was able to rhyme off 2 or 3 of the other young lads who had left at the same time as me, and he knew where they were and what they were up to as well. So I think that's, a mark of the man, really.
Yeah, certainly is. Brian Kerr does a lot of work with us here on Off the Ball. He's our number one co-commentator. I told him you were coming on and asked him any stories. He was obviously very complimentary about the run to the Under-16 European Championship, but he also said to ask you about the red card in South Africa at the Meridian Cup in Cape Town. You gave the centre forward a good boot while he was waiting on a throw-in. Don't think I spoke to him again for the rest of the trip. Yeah,
it was, I mean, people, unfortunately, don't talk a lot about some of the goals I scored or some of the good performances. It always seems to come back to discipline. And, unfortunately, during that time, obviously, we had won the Under-16 European Championships together, and we then had to go out to Africa and take part in this tournament. And, one of the strikers there was kind of causing me all kinds of problems, not just through his ability, but also pinching me and nipping me, and the ball was up the other end of the pitch, and I thought it was a good time to try and leave my mark on him. So I've still got the scar on my knuckle to prove it. But unfortunately, the linesman on the far side had picked it up, so I got sent off, and I never kicked the ball again in that tournament. Right.
When you talk to some of the players around that time, and it's remarkable to think, considering some of the barren years Ireland have had over the last decade in terms of producing players, to win an Under-16 and Under-18 European Championship in the same year, following on from finishing third at an Under-19 World Cup. We never had it so good. And it seems as young lads, you never had it so good, that Brian Kerr and Noel O'Reilly just created this brilliant environment where you could enjoy yourselves at the right time, but you could be professional at the right time.
Yeah, and I still, to this day, I still use some of the ideas, if you like. I'm not a huge disciplinarian in terms of, ruling with an iron fist, if you like. I don't want to be seen as some kind of head teacher and, shouting and barking at the guys. It's not like that at all. I come and go with the players. when we're on pre-season tour, for instance, if I try and treat them like adults, and I give them a little bit of leeway. If they want to go for a couple of pints, no problem at all. If they get too carried away and they take advantage of the situation, then obviously things need to change. But I think you get more back at times from individuals if you treat them with that respect and give them that bit of autonomy at times. And I think that's what Brian and Noel were so good at. We knew when it was time to focus on the job in hand, but we were also given that little bit of leeway to go and be young men and to enjoy ourselves from time to time. And I think that's why Brian was able to get the best out of us. He was one of the best, and still is one of the best managers that I've ever worked with. Hence why we got the results that we got.
Assuming you weren't going for pints at the under-16 European Championship.
Some of us, I looked like I do now at 16.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say, you could have got away with it. Yeah.
So, some of us did pass for a lot older than 16. But now Brian and Noel were just two fantastic men. And, I'm very fortunate to still keep in touch with Brian now. And, we have got a group chat on the go from our under-16 team where all the lads, everybody's still involved in it. And from time to time, we'll have a bit of crack in there. And I'm hoping now, because of this COVID situation over the last couple of years, we've planned on meeting up and trying to go for a couple of beers back home. And obviously, it's very difficult to get dates that suit everybody. But, COVID has obviously put a real dampener on that. So hopefully now, next summer, with the restrictions lifting and everything trying to get back to normal, hopefully next year during the off season, we'll be able to meet up in Dublin or Cork or wherever and reminisce about some of the good old days.
And of course, that tournament was in Scotland. So when you're playing St. Johnstone and you're walking into the ground where the final was, are you telling all the lads, when I was 16, the things I did?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that was the great thing about it as well, because, logistically, it was brilliant for all of our families. I'm not saying, look, if the tournament had been France or Spain or Italy or wherever, I think, they all would have made the trip regardless. But because Celtic had such a big game on the following day, Celtic had to win to win the league. In fact, they were playing St. Johnstone at Parkhead, which was quite ironic because we were playing at McDiarmid Park in the final. But the amount of Irish that were there, not just family and friends who had made the trip, but the amount of Celtic supporters that had travelled up to Perth from Glasgow, I don't think the Italians knew what hit them on the night. And it was just a fantastic tournament from the first minute to the last. We only conceded one goal in the whole tournament, and that was in the final against Italy. Had some great players involved in the group. Some of them went on to fantastic things and played at the highest point possible. And just great memories. I can't believe they're as long ago as what they are, but it doesn't seem like 24 years ago.
Yeah. Italy, Portugal and Spain, with Iker Casillas in goals for Spain at the time, beaten along the way, is one of the great Irish sporting achievements. And I hope you do get that reunion. You went on to have a really successful career. You mentioned joining Stockport. I guess at that stage, in a way, you're leaving the dream factory of Celtic, which is the thing as a kid you're growing up thinking about. At that stage, are you changing your mindset to, I'm now becoming a sort of hardened pro, that the dream of the 60,000 seater stadium, everyone chanting my name every day. Actually, I'm just going to knuckle down and play football every week and make the most of that.
Yeah, I think when you're at a club like Celtic for as long as I was, I was there for 5 years, you kind of almost becomes a bit of a comfort zone, if you like. And sometimes the idea of change can be nerve-wracking. But I was 20 years old at the time. I had only played one senior game of football for Celtic, while a lot of my friends who were at maybe lower league clubs in England had been playing 60, 70, 100 senior games and were, what I felt at the time, miles ahead of where I was in terms of my my career and where I wanted to be. So I had to make that step. Stockport County weren't, it was a great club. I loved it. I loved my time there, but they certainly didn't have the same facilities as what Celtic had. So it is a bit of an eye opener, but it's a reality check at the same time as well. You're used to getting all this free gear at Celtic, as many pairs of boots as you want and trainers and everything else. And then you go to a club like Stockport where, you've got you've got to just get back into the real world, and you've got to knuckle down and try and make a career. And I think as well, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the lads would agree with me, the boys who move away from home, you've almost got that sense of, not wanting to go back home because you don't want to be deemed a failure, if you like. And I'm not saying guys that did go home, but, were looked on that way. But certainly as a young man, you've given up so much of your childhood to become a professional footballer that you don't want to give up at the first obstacle. And, leaving Celtic was a big challenge, but it was certainly the right move at the right time for me.
You played for Ireland as well. You got your one cap for Ireland. It's one of those that when they do those one cap wonder things, your name pops up in the list. I do always wonder from the outside, like, do you look back at that one cap? It was against Finland, I think, the game straight after the 2002 World Cup, and think, yeah, actually, I have lived that dream that I had as a kid watching Italia 90. I pulled on the Ireland jersey. I came on for Robbie Keane in a game. Or do you look back and go, God, I wish I'd got more opportunities? Are you satisfied now with that one cap and saying, yes, I played for my country? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, look, when I look back, I'm quite pragmatic about everything, and I'm quite realistic as well about the career that I've had. I didn't believe, that I was good enough to play for Celtic at that time when I was there, and that wasn't me lacking confidence or lacking self-belief. I was being realistic. I wasn't as good as the players that were there and that were ahead of me, and the Irish thing was the same. The pleasing thing for me is going to Celtic for 5 years and having not played a single game for the first team would have been a real blow, because you feel as if, well, I've given up 5 years of my life there and I haven't even experienced stepping out onto Parkhead's turf. The fact that I'd done it once was enough for me, because there's millions of Celtic fans all over the world that would give their right arm to do the same thing. So that was a very proud moment for me and my family. And obviously, having one senior cap, I wouldn't change it for the world. I really wouldn't. Again, I was quite honest with myself. At the time, Mick McCarthy, who I'm still indebted to for giving me those, I think it was 12 minutes I got in the end in Finland, but still very grateful to him for giving me the opportunity. And it was just right place, right time, really. I played a game for the 21s the night before. I played particularly well. I think they had one or two injuries within the first team squad in training. Mick invited me into the squad. Never for 1 minute believed I would get a jersey. Never mind getting on the pitch. And then to walk in and be given a squad number, and then when he said my name to go and get warmed up that you were going on, heart was pounding out of my chest. But I was just determined to go on there and give it my all and try and not make any mistakes. And the first team lads were brilliant on the night as well, very supportive. And I think they are the two proudest moments. Obviously winning the under-16 championships was great. I've been very fortunate in my time at St Mirren as well, where we won a cup there. But those two particular moments as a young Irishman, playing for Celtic, first team, and having a senior Irish international cap, I don't think it gets much better for me for the level of player that I was.
Do you still have the jersey?
Oh yeah, I have, and I have everything kept safe. Don't worry about that. All my caps and the Celtic jersey, the Irish jersey.
Great.
Everything is there for my little boy. Is 8 years old now, James, and he's football mad. So one day he'll get his hands on all that.
Yeah, geez, that was a tough time to get in as a centre half when you have John O'Shea and Richard Dunn just emerging, Gary Breen and Kenny Cunningham there already, Steve Staunton, all these guys playing week in, week out in the Premier League. It's obviously a very different landscape in Irish football at the moment. What's the ambition? You mentioned how you went back into the real world at some stage. You got a proper job, so you were out of football, and I don't know if you thought at that stage that's me done, or if the ambition was always management, and whether you see that as the next 10, 20 years of your life.
I wanted to try and play. My goal that I set myself when I was a player was to try and play till I was 40. And I went to Alloa at 34, and then the job just became available because Jack Ross moved on. And as much as I wanted to continue playing, I felt that particular moment in time, I had the badges, the qualifications. I spoke to the chairman at depth. Alloa had a great history of developing young managers and giving them time to make mistakes, and I just felt it was too big an opportunity to turn down at the time. And obviously now it has proven to be the right decision. I don't miss playing a great deal, to be honest, because I just love the job that I'm doing. I always wanted to be a manager at some level, and I'm extremely ambitious. As much as I'm loving my time at St. Mirren, and I've been very honest with the supporters there and even the board of directors in different conversations, they know that I have ambitions of my own to one day hopefully move on to a bigger club, if you like, and challenge myself at a different level. And hopefully, if we continue to get the results on the park with St. Mirren, that those opportunities will arise. But my end game, and I've spoken, numerous times in the past with journalists like yourself from Ireland and over here, I always wanted to play for my country. When I was a player, I couldn't understand these players that were feigning injuries left, right, and centre to go to Dubai for 4 days as opposed to pick up a cap for the country. I'm very patriotic. I'm a very proud Irishman, and that for me would be the ultimate dream. Would be to lead Ireland out as manager one day. I'm still only 40, believe it or not. I know it looks hard to believe, but I am.
Worked well for you when you were 16.
Yeah, I know, but I'm still I'm relatively young when it comes to the managerial side of things. But yeah, that is for me the ultimate job. To be able to manage a country. I know some people will say managing in the English Premier League or managing in other countries is a dream, but for me the dream job is to be manager of Ireland one day. And hopefully I need to do a hell of a lot more in the game to even be considered for that kind of position. But yeah, hopefully I'll have the success that I believe I will have, and that opportunity will arise.
Yeah, you're obviously talking to Stephen Kenny, I'm sure, quite a bit around Conor Ronan and around Jamie McGrath. You getting a sense from Stephen as to just how big a job it is and the pressures that come with it?
Yeah, I mean, look, and I'm delighted that when the FAI appoint people like Stephen, it gives me great hope as well, because you think, the likes of Trapattoni and guys like that, it's very difficult for young men like me to compete with someone of the ilk of a Trapattoni. But for the FAI to be as open-minded as what they were in the appointment of Stephen Kenny, I think is fantastic. I'm delighted that they've stuck with him, because I know he had been getting a lot of flack. I know they had been on a poor run of results, but I could see what he was trying to do with the team. Ireland needed to bring in some fresh blood. They needed to bring through some of these young up-and-coming players, as Stephen has done. But to do that, you need to be patient, because the success just won't come instantly. These young lads need to get used to playing at that level. And I think we're starting to see the benefits of that now. And Stephen deserves all the plaudits and all the credit for that. And I hope the next campaign is a really successful one. And I think the experience that some of these young lads have had up to now will stand them in great stead for the next competition coming up. And yeah, I hope Stephen has got many more successful years with Ireland. And one day he might step aside and let me jump in instead.
Give you a go at it. Jim, you've been great with your time. I know we've kept you longer than you'd anticipated, but very best of luck over the rest of the season and whatever happens in the future with St. Mirren. And who knows, maybe you get a few more months out of Jamie McGrath as well.
Thanks very much. Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, Nathan.